Hi, I'm Jess and welcome to Jess in Romancelandia, where I talk about romance books and love and everything else that is made of squish and rainbows. Today I'm going to be filming my first ever ebook haul, so I do most of my reading on my trusty Kindle. Generally when it comes to reading I do prefer the feeling of holding a paperback book. I don't know what it is, it's something about the paper and the ink and the whole feeling that gives, but in terms of convenience, the Kindle has definitely been a lifesaver for me over this past year. It's meant that I can just have it in my bag wherever I go, and as a result it's meant that I get a lot more reading done because I just have endless options and opportunities to read literally within my handbag. So I really have gotten a lot of use out of the Kindle this past year, and I've accumulated quite the collection of ebooks along the way as well. As you guys may know, if you've watched some of my earlier videos, I'm also subscribed to Kindle Unlimited, so I've kind of split this haul into two halves. The first half is talking about the books that I have bought for my Kindle, and the second half, which is much shorter because I don't actually have that many books downloaded from Kindle Unlimited at the moment, is the books that I found through that platform. As you may have already guessed from the title of this channel, pretty much every book on this list is a romance novel, so if that isn't something that interests you, what do you have against love? No, if that's not something you're into, well then hopefully I can change your mind over the course of this video or this channel, but just be prepared going into this video for how many times I'm going to use words like rake and romance and happily ever after, because it's going to be a lot. Okay, so now I have babbled sufficiently, let's get in with the first book, which is The Long and Winding Road by TJ Klune. This is the final book in a series I discovered about a week ago and have just flown through since then, and that is the Bear, Otter and the Kid series. So this series follows a pair of brothers who are based in a very small seaside town in Oregon. Their names are Derek and Tyson, but they're known respectively in their families, in their friendship circles, in their communities as Bear and the Kid. So the first book in this series begins when Tyson is 5 years old and Bear is just about to graduate high school, when he comes home one day and discovers that their famously neglectful mother has left him a note basically stating that she has skipped town with one of her boyfriends and he is now the guardian of his younger brother. Even though Bear has been providing most of the emotional and physical and even financial care for Tyson since his little brother's birth, this is still a lot of responsibility to thrust on a 17-18-year-old boy, and it's one that's going to affect his whole future and stop his plans of going off to college with his long-term girlfriend Anna. This whole situation is made even more complicated when Bear slowly starts to realise that he may have feelings for his best friend's older brother Otter, who is openly gay, whereas Bear himself has never really given any thought to his sexuality outside of his relationship with Anna, who's his childhood friend. There are 4 books in the series. Like I said, The Long and Winding Road is the 4th one, and I'm so excited to see where this series concludes because it is one of the most beautiful sagas that I've read in a really long time. Even though the love story between Bear and Otter is at the heart of this series, it's about so much more than just these two men. It's about the brotherhood between Bear and Tyson, it's about found families, it's about identity and how that is a fluid and ever-changing thing. All of the characters are lovable and memorable and distinctive, especially Bear, our narrator, who just has one of the most neurotic, hilarious, internal monologue full voices I've ever read. TJ Klune is a really funny writer, and despite the fact that the previous 3 installments in the series have been very heavy on the emotion, I also have laughed out loud a lot whilst reading these books, which is something that I never do. I never physically laugh. You know how when someone messages you lol and really you're just kind of exhaling a bit heavier through your nose? This book does not fall into nose exhalation territory. This is proper laugh out loud territory. So I'm really excited to see where this final book, which I believe is set a few years after the previous installments, goes with the story of Bear, Otter and the Kid. Also, the first book in the series is actually available on Kindle Unlimited, which is where I discovered it, so definitely get your hands on that one. The next ebook on this list is actually a series that I've been meaning to read for a long time, and that is the Wallflower Series by Lisa Kleypas. Lisa Kleypas is one of my all-time favourite historical romance authors. She wrote one of my favourite series, which I mentioned in my top 5 historical romances video, which is the Hathaway Breakaways series, but the Wallflowers is one of her earlier works and one of her most loved works, both in the wider literary community and the booktube community. The first book in the series is called Secrets of a Summer Night, but I also have the other installments in the series, which all revolve around a group of 4 girls who are all wallflowers within this particular London season. When they realise that they're all kind of in the same boat of being shunted to the sidelines along this endless parade of balls and social gatherings, the women kind of decide to form this impromptu friendship group where they support each other and their endeavours within London society. Female friendship is something I'm always on the lookout for in romance novels. I feel like a lot of the time heterosexual romance novels focus so much on that central relationship that even the heroine's external relationships feel like they're revolving around that hero. And this book series seems to be at its core about these women together, more so than the individual love stories that they find with their respective heroes. So I'm really excited to read this. The next book on this list is Beautiful Sinner by Sophie Jordan, and this follows a woman named Gabriella who is a small town journalist. Gabriella has always been on the lower rungs of popularity in the social ladder of her town, but she sees an opportunity to advance her career and to really take hold of her future when her former school crush Cruz comes back into town after being accused of committing a very violent crime. Gabriella decides that she is going to face up to her former childhood crush and get the story that everyone has been asking for, but things get a little bit complicated when these old feelings for Cruz start to resurface. It sounds like a really fun, angsty romance novel. One of my favourite tropes is kind of that childhood enemies, indifference turned lovers, and this sounds just straight up my alley because of that, so I'm super excited to get to this one. The next book on my list is Neanderthal Seeks Human by Penelope Reed. Penelope Reed is very much a beloved author in the contemporary romance community, and you may know her from her Winston Brothers novels, which are they stand out because they all have pictures of guys with like really grey beards on the covers. But this series is the first book in her Knitting in the City series, which kind of has something in common with the Wallflowers, because what unites the series is a group of women, except these women are all part of a kind of social knitting group, which just sounds absolutely adorable. So this book follows the very bookish and socially awkward Janie, who is just having a really bad day. When this book starts, she finds out that her boyfriend has been cheating on her, she finds out that she is losing her job, and then after a mishap kind of goes down when she's leaving her office, she is escorted from the building by the very hot security guard that she has been crushing on for a long time. After said security guard removes her from her place of work, he and Janie strike up this very strange friendship of sorts, which lo and behold evolves into a romance, and it just sounds really adorable and fun and cute and quirky, as is everything that Penelope Reed writes, so I'm really looking forward to this one as well. Next up is Managed by Kristen Callahan, which is the second book in the VIP series, which revolves around the famous rock band Kill John and their love lives. I wasn't a massive fan of the first book in this series, Idol. It was okay. I think I gave it 3 stars, so it wasn't, you know, offensively bad, but it wasn't like standout good. But I picked up the second book anyway when I found out that the hero of it was one of the most intriguing side characters from the first book, which is the band's very cold and prickly manager, Gabriel Scott. So this book begins on a plane where Gabriel, who is a very nervous flyer, kind of gets into like a verbal battle of wits with a woman named Sophie, who books the seat next to his on said plane. The two are essentially at each other's throats for most of the flight, and then things get really awkward when they land, and Gabriel realizes that Sophie is actually who he has hired to be the band's new media manager. One thing that I did really enjoy with Idol is that Kristen Callahan is great at writing very kind of heated, witty banter, and when you mix that in with this premise, it just sounds like this is going to be a really explosive, fun book. So I just went for it with this one. I'm hoping that the series goes up from the first book, and I'm really looking forward to reading the story of Gabriel and Sophie. Veering back towards historical romance now, the next book on this list is Love and Other Scandals by Caroline Linden. 3 of my favourite tropes in any romance are ugly ducklings, siblings best friend, and the rake, and this book seems to combine all 3 of those, and as soon as I found that out, it was like straight in my ebook cart. Like it just went straight into my cart and in my Kindle, and I was powerless to stop it when I saw the combined forces of these tropes. So this is a Victorian historical romance, and it follows a spinster named Joan. Joan's mother has a lot of social aspirations for her daughter, but whereas her mother was a very traditional darling of the ton, Joan is very unconventional. She's a taller woman woman, she's got a stronger build, she gets angry and has a temper, and so she kind of always feels out of place when her mother is putting her in, you know, the clothes and the situations that she would have enjoyed herself, but that aren't so much suited to Joan's personality. After several unsuccessful seasons, Joan just kind of doesn't care anymore, and she strikes up a very unusual friendship with her brother's best friend, who is an infamous London rake. Like I said, this book just sounds like it combines several of my favourite things in a lovely Victorian package, so I'm definitely going to get on this one soon. Next up is A Duke in Shining Armour by Loretta Chase. If that name sounds familiar to you, that is because Loretta Chase is behind what is widely known as one of the best historical romances of all time, The Lord of Scoundrels. A Duke in Shining Armour follows a young aristocratic woman who is betrothed to a duke. However, she knows the duke does not love her and she doesn't want to be trapped in a loveless marriage, so on the day of her wedding she kind of decides fuck it and climbs out of the window, I believe full wedding garb and all, and just flees. Said duke's best friend, who is also a duke, because apparently in historical romance land there was just an endless supply of eligible duke bachelors dicking about England, decides that this cannot happen to his best friend, and so he sets off on this young woman's tail to bring her back in time to marry his mate, although of course along the way romance and confusion and chaos goes down. The premise of this book hooked me right away because it sounded kind of like a modern runaway bride, and the image of Julia Roberts in full like Victorian gear just had me there. The next book on this list is by one of my favourite historical romance authors of all time, and it is A Soldier's Scoundrel by Cat Sebastian. This is the first book in her Turner series, so it's a new Cat Sebastian adventure for me and I'm really excited about that. And it follows Jack, who is a former thief and con man turned PI, and Oliver, who is the son of an earl and a former soldier who returns from war injured and with quite a severe limp. Oliver is bored and disillusioned following his experiences with war and kind of searching for just something more in his life. He stumbles into Jack's offices when he discovers that his sister has paid Jack a great deal of money for something that no one in the family knows about, so he decides that he's going to get to the bottom of the issue himself. As a result of this, it sounds like he and Jack just kind of go romping about on adventures together, which sounds hilarious and romantic and fun, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Cat Sebastian just writes some of the most wonderful historical romance, and yeah, I really recommend any of her works and I'm super excited to get started with this one. Next up we have something of a classic in the historical romance genre, and that is The Bride by Julie Garwood. I actually don't know much about this one beyond the fact that it is a classic within the genre. What I do know is that it follows a Scottish lord who is bound to marry an English woman. Said English woman decides to retain what power she can within the marriage by deciding that even though he may have her legally, he will never have her heart. Although that's kind of, in romance, as soon as someone says you will never have my heart or I will never love you, your brain automatically knows where that story is going, but it's still just like really fun to read. Old school romances are really hit and miss with me, so I'm kind of nervous about this one, but it's got such a great series of reviews on Goodreads, so I'm really hopeful too. Next on the list is The Forbidden Rose by Joanna Bourne, which I'm really excited about because it covers a period that I don't read that much about in historical romance, which is the French Revolution. So it follows a woman named Marguerite who is essentially smuggling people out of the country that are due to be executed by guillotine. When Marguerite's identity is uncovered, she flees and is aided by an Englishman named William Doyle, who is disguising himself as a bookmaster when he is in fact a spy who has been sent by the English government to find and track down Marguerite's father. That was a really convoluted attempt at explaining the plot, but basically English spy helps badass French woman when he's really trying to get hold of her father. So it sounds like there's a lot of double crossing and betrayal and spy like excitement going on, and I'm super excited for this one. I'm going to be singing the Les Mis soundtrack the entire time, but I'm still super excited for this one. Next on the list is another first for me, which is a steampunk, and that is Kiss of Steel by Beck McMaster. So in this series, Victorian London is ruled by a race called the Blue Bloods, who are essentially blood drinkers that have to drink blood or they turn into this kind of vicious, soulless monster. The central hub of the Blue Bloods is in Whitechapel and is overseen by a very intimidating figure of a man named Blade. Our heroine of the story, Honoria, decides to flee to Whitechapel to escape from an abusive duke, knowing that the only person in London who could possibly protect her and possibly has anything more against the duke than she does is the Blue Bloods. She and Blade strike up some sort of protection deal and badassery and romance and all of that delicious stuff ensues. So the final book on this list before I get into my Kindle Unlimited purchases doesn't really fall into the romance category, but I'm super excited to read it nonetheless, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I honestly don't know much about this book besides the fact that it is, again, a very beloved title. What I do know is that it follows a old Hollywood starlet who I assume is named Evelyn. Evelyn is famous for her very mysterious and elusive past until one day she hires a young journalist to whom she decides to tell her entire fascinating story. I'm really excited about this one. Taylor Jenkins Reid has a really dedicated group of fans, and I'd really like to count myself amongst them, so I will let you know what I think of this one when I get to it. Now on to the Kindle Unlimited reads. You can rent up to 10 books at a time in Kindle Unlimited, but at the moment I only have 3 titles on my shelf, but I'm really excited about all of them. The first book is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa, who is the writer of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse series, which I also really enjoyed. Laura Thalassa writes mainly paranormal romance, full of like badass women and really great banter, and Rhapsodic just sounded like such an interesting read to me. It follows a young siren named Calypso who over the years has garnered a series of IOUs from this mysterious fae named the Bargainer. Everyone knows that when you make a deal with the Bargainer, sooner or later he's going to collect, either by you repaying him with a favour or with your death. So you can imagine Calypso's abject terror when she comes home one day and finds said faking Lord of the Underworld just kind of casually sitting in her bedroom, telling her that he is ready to collect on not one, but all of his favours. It sounds super fun. The 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse series was just like a whirlwind read for me. It was just such delicious goodness, so I'm really excited to read this series as well. Next up is a rom-com from a British author that I adore, and that is Here's Looking at You by Varia McFarlane. Here's Looking at You follows a woman named Aureliana who I think is in her 30s when the story starts, and she is on her way to a secondary school reunion. Back in school, Aureliana was a real victim of bullying, and she is determined to show everyone that she has turned her life around in spite of their cruelty and their harsh words. However, in the months following the reunion, Aureliana can't stop running into one of her former bully's cronies, James, and the two of them develop this kind of love-hate relationship, which I am sure, going on everything I've read from Varia McFarlane before, is full of hilarity and misunderstandings and just British comedic gold. And finally on this list is a hockey romance that I'm super excited to get to, and that is Breakaways by Avon Gale. So this book follows a rookie hockey player named Lane who is aware of his sexuality but has kind of been unwilling to explore it over the years until he meets and develops feelings for a player on his rival team. I love sports romances, which is very weird because I hate sports, but as soon as you throw kissing in there, I suddenly become like the biggest hockey fan on the planet, so I'm super excited to get to this one. It is also apparently the first book in a series that follows several other hockey players and their coaches coming to terms with their sexuality and their love lives, which just sounds like my own personal brand of romantic crack, so I am hyped up, I am ready for this. Okay, so those are all of the ebooks that I currently have crowding my Kindle. I'm really excited to get to them, but as always, if you guys have any more recommendations for me to add to my shelves, I would love to know, so please leave a comment below. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye!